Carrie and this cruise than other ones. A lot of hurricanes we've had lately didn't have a strong backsides to them. The winds on the backside of the storm will probably be stronger than what you're seeing with Carrie and his crew right now. Right now, it looks like they're estimated, I'd say, anywhere between 80 to possibly up to 90-mile-per-hour gusts on the backside of the storm. After the eye passes, it's going to be clear, it's going to be pretty calm, and then when the winds come in from the backside, that's when we could see 120 to 130-mile-per-hour gusts.
Some of the strongest winds we've felt so far from the hurricane. I'm taking a knee here because, quite frankly, if I stand up, I think I'm toppled over.
Yeah, you could easily see some debris flying back and behind you. You know, so far so good with some of those roof in the background there. But yeah, I'd say, you know, they're close up there, probably to almost Category 2 gusts where Carrie is located right there now. But Carrie will be in the center of this storm and in the eye, probably from about, I'd say roughly 3:30 East Coast time, maybe till about 6:30. The eye's 30 miles wide. If it's only traveling at 9 miles per hour, you got like 3 hours in the eye of the storm. And then you're going to get the winds roaring back from the opposite direction after it passes by. And that's what we're going to be experiencing. A little wider view, yeah, there's confirmation where Carrie is located. 93-mile-per-hour gust was just reported. So if you're wondering what a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust looks like, you probably just witnessed it live on TV. And even to the north now, that northern eye wall is all the way up here to Venice. So anywhere from Inglewood to Venice, that's where you're going to have a lot of Category 1, Category 2 wind damage. The south side, we've lost our wind sensors from the Naples to Fort Myers area with the high winds. This is in the backside, is when that comes through, that's when the storm surge is going to be peaking. So we expect the storm surge to peak close to high tide in the Fort Myers area, right around about maybe 5 p.m. to about 9 p.m. this evening in that region. And then we're going to take the storm inland. And once it finally crosses over land and gets to about where Carrie's located in Punta Gorda, that's when the weakening will begin. The friction of the land and the trees and the buildings will begin to slowly weaken the storm, but very slowly. You know, guys, you know, we only can show you so many, you know, dramatic images and pictures. I'm sure we're not showing you the worst, but we have to keep our crew safe at the same time also. Trust me, there's a lot worse out there happening right now than what you're just listening, what we can show you.
Hey, Carrie, can you still hear us? Give me a thumbs up, Carrie.
Ready for you.
I'm not sure if Carrie can hear us anymore. Bill, let me go back to you then and just...
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, you got me.
Is
okay.
that Kate?
Yeah, that's Kate. It's Kate and Aaron, so we're just going back and forth. I'm wondering about those people that we just saw behind you. Are there still a lot of people around?
Well, a lot of them are storm chasers.
Okay.
They're mostly storm chasers. All guys, all between 20 and 25 years old. Most of them with YouTube channels.
Gotcha.
And they say they've chased tornadoes. For some of them, they tell me this is the first time they've ever been to a hurricane. You know, I heard Bill talk about lightning. We had a lightning strike here that caused everybody to move. It was so bright and so loud, and I suspect we will see more of that. You know, again, where I'm standing, I've got a little bit of a protection. So if I just take a few steps back, you can see how much stronger this wind is by... Oh, there we go. See, it's weird. Now there's no wind, and then I take a little bit further out. It's really not that bad. I'm just going to move in, you know.
Yeah,
I think you got the idea of what the strength of the wind is. There's no reason to stand there and try to make my way. Hang on a second. There we go.
And Carrie, you make
back here.
You make a good point about how these sorts of storms can change up at the turn, you know, on the drop of a dime. You have different conditions, which emphasizes what makes them so dangerous for people who perhaps didn't evacuate in areas where they should have evacuated.
You know, one of the things that you're looking at, you know, can be very confusing because you see me out here. And even though I've covered, you know, almost 40 years of hurricanes, it's just experience. There's no real, like, this is the way to cover a hurricane. I've got a helmet on. I've got some eye protection. So there are some people say, so why would I, like, not do what Carrie's doing and go out and walk around in the hurricane? We do our very best to try to use the protection of buildings to get into a parking garage, to use these just moments where we're out there to demonstrate. At the end of the day, the folks who might want to step out of their house when the eye passes over, because remember, the eye comes, it's super calm. That be deceptive because you think you're outdoors and everything is calm, and the next thing you know, the other side of the eye wall is hitting you. And as you know, Bill has been explaining throughout here, the strongest winds are right there on that eye wall. Bill, what is the latest data? I'd heard a gust up to 195 miles an hour. Is that correct, or do we wait to get that data a little bit later as the storm is finally down to a Category 1 and a little bit later? Do we know what the top speed is right now?
Kerry, the airport closest to you there in Punta Gorda just had a 93-mile-per-hour wind gust. That was the highest that we had. And as far as we can tell now, the anemometer, the gauge that measures the wind, is still functioning. So that's a confirmed 93-mile-per-hour gust where you were located. And Kerry, I don't know if you could hear me earlier when I was talking. I have a funny feeling, and it's not funny, but the backside for you may be stronger than the front side, what you're going through now. And I know we've done a lot of these storms in the past, like Irma and a couple other ones with you, where the backside really didn't have a lot to it. That's not this storm. This storm has a very ferocious backside, and when you go through that tonight from about 6:30 to about 9:30, you may have winds stronger than now. Plus, it'll also be dark, which will make it a lot more dangerous.
All right.
Yeah, it makes it dangerous and it makes it eerie, I mean, the thing about a daytime storm is you see a lot. In a nighttime storm, you don't see it. It's usually just the aftermath. And it's going to take us a while because, as you pointed out, I mean, the storm is going to finally be pushed through in the darkness. So to get a real assessment by the county officials, by the state officials, and the federal officials, that will take some time because without daylight, it's extremely dangerous to be out on the road. There are going to be down power lines if there aren't already. The power lines could be live. There's no reason to be out driving in that where there might be a power line, and the next thing you know, there's a fatality, and we have seen that before. So the desire for people to want to know, so how bad is the damage? It will take a while to get that assessment simply because it'll be dark.
All right, Kerry Sanders, we're going to give you a chance to reset here there in Punta Gorda, Florida, as Ian gets closer to where he is. Kerry, thank you.
Much more NBC News Daily. Right after this, we're going to be back with our special coverage right here on NBC after a short break.
The indictment of a former president, or perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern? Can you update us on the status of negotiations? Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Ukraine and Russia. Could you help me understand what's going on?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. To help your family edition.
To cover the news, you have to be in it. This is how so many towns and cities are protecting themselves. They're pushing the gates open. Was there a school officer on campus? That's what we've been told.
No. Top Story with Tom Yamas. Weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Hey, podcast fans. Ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get early access to originals, plus bonus content, and everything is ad-free. So head to Apple Podcasts now to subscribe.
These days, it feels like the news never stops. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. It can be hard to keep up, so let's get started together.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
This is live news coming in from Florida, where Hurricane Ian has made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 hurricane.
Your message to girls who want to
like, share, and subscribe to the Meteorologist YouTube channel. We'll be live throughout this hurricane, live from Miami, Florida, through this hurricane. As long as we have internet access and electricity, we will be doing this live for you. We're going to go outside pretty soon to have a live link, a live feed from outside to see what is going on.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand, so we've created a newscast just for them. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. As we look out over the latest city-turned-crime scene, we see the things left behind. Can you tell us what it was like? Our NBC News exclusive.
Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kate Snow.
And I'm Aaron Gilchrist. This is our special coverage of Hurricane Ian as it blows across Florida's southwest coast.
Technically has not made landfall yet, but don't tell that to the folks that are in it right now. This is a violent storm. It is pounding the region. We're seeing some astonishing images. Just a moment ago, a few minutes ago, that stop sign was still wavering. Now it's on the ground. That is in Punta Gorda. We're seeing more than 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts there.
At the same time, the water is what really is so terrifying about this whole situation. You take a look at the storm surge that we've been seeing coming inland for the last few hours in places like downtown Naples. You can see some of the video there. Ali Velshi saying earlier they think there's an 8-foot storm surge already coming into that area before this storm makes landfall, washing away cars, taking out trees and such in that area. Just an incredibly frightening situation.
Let's go to Fort Myers Mayor Kevin Anderson if we have him. I know there are serious concerns there right now. There's already water coming in. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being with us. Do you have any sense for whether, I mean, we're seeing these pictures out of Naples just to your south that look like underwater. What's happening in Fort Myers?
So far on the barrier islands and the beach, we're seeing the same type of flooding. I am here in downtown Fort Myers, about 2 blocks away from the Caloosahatchee River. So far, there's no flooding. A lot of heavy winds. Can see some debris flying. The rain has not been very heavy, but the winds have been very strong. We are concerned that when this does push upriver, that we will see that storm surge and possibly the flooding.
So, Mr. Mayor, based on that concern, what have you been able to do to be prepared for that if it does, in fact, come to bear?
There's really nothing you can do to prepare for it other than your recovery, your response and recovery. We have our emergency management teams on standby, ready to hit the streets as soon as it's safe.
We're looking at shots. I don't know if you can see it, Mr. Mayor, but we're looking at an overhead shot of Fort Myers that is shaking in the wind. It looks incredibly windy there right now. And you say barrier islands, you have heard reports of flooding. Would that be Captiva? What are we talking about?
Pine Island, Captiva, Sanibel.
Okay.
Estero Island.
And is anyone there? I think I might have heard you say earlier today that there were still people. Do you know if it fully evacuated?
I doubt if it's fully evacuated. I believe Sanibel had a pretty good percentage of their residents do so. I know that the shelters have a lot of activity.
And so at this point, for folks who didn't evacuate, your best advice is what?
Oh, you have to stay put. It is not safe to get out there whatsoever.
All right, Mr. Mayor, appreciate it very much. Thanks for being with us. We'll check back in with him a little bit later. Down in the lower left part of your screen, that's video from earlier that I saw coming in from Naples. It looks like a power line down. We're not sure exactly what it is, but it looked like a power line had fallen, which is a real risk in storms like this.
Right, and we know that a couple 100,000 people have already lost power in different parts of Florida now as the storm has been coming ashore. We've seen, obviously, the flooding. We see when power lines come down, often there are fires that are started. And we've been told by the emergency responders that this is just going to they're not going to be able to go out to put out fires. They can't get the fire trucks onto the street. And so that sort of emphasizes the danger that exists for anybody who wasn't able to evacuate.
That's right. We're going to take a quick break right now. We'll have much more on hurricane coverage right after this.
Well, you can see right now, take a look at that stop sign just blowing around as the wind is picking up there. It's a very, very strong hurricane right now. And
Tonight, I interviewed Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg about the ongoing delays. You seem to be pointing the finger at the airlines. They're pointing the finger back. Mr. Secretary, when is this going to get better?
News is happening now.
Look at what's making headlines around the world.
Right now on Morning News Now.
We're coming on the air with breaking news.
And this is a significant moment.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Top Story with Tom Llamas is your news playlist on NBC News Now. And now, you can listen to it as a podcast. Available anytime and anywhere.
News is happening now.
Look at what's making headlines around the world.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, It's here now.
As we look out over the latest city-turned-crime scene, we see the things left behind. Can you tell us what it was like? For NBC News exclusive.
Top Story with Tom Llamas. Weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Welcome to today.
I love mornings of possibility.
Rain. Watching some of these heavier showers here in Polk and over towards Hillsborough County, where you see some of these oranges on the map now. This is riding right down I-4 from Lakeland, heading through Plant City, Seffner, Valrico, coming up the I-4 275 interchange. That's going to go through Orient, right down MLK into Tampa. These little orange spots indicate heavier amounts of rain. Wherever you get that heavier rain, you're also going to bring down stronger wind gusts. So in between the rain, like we're looking right now in the Keystone area, maybe West Chase Town and Country, Carrollwood, it's not raining all that bad. The wind's probably not all that bad either. And suddenly, one of these little showers is going to come in overhead, and that's where you get that wind gust to 30, 40, 45 miles an hour. The rain goes by and the winds subside. And that's kind of how this is going to play out for many of you, if not most of you, during the overnight, unless you're in that eye wall as Ian weakens and heads up towards the north and northeast. Pinellas County, heaviest rain now in the southern part of the county. Manatee County, it is coming down. This is where we are getting some tropical storm force wind gusts for sure. Riverview down towards Bartow and Davenport. Wesley Chapel, some heavier downpours here headed your way. These are going to come through 98, cross 301 Zephyr Hills, and then head right into Wesley Chapel, and then right down Pasco County towards the coast up towards Newport Richey. So you saw the wind gusts there. It's really I-4 south that we're really starting to see a lot of the stronger winds. North of there, they're weaker, but even Tampa at TPA, 52 in the last hour into tropical storm strength. These are sustained winds, not the gusts, and you see they do vary. Locations near the water are going to see stronger winds, and then if you get caught under some of that heavier rain, Citrus over towards Hernando and Pasco County, it hasn't been that bad. It's been a breezy, maybe a windy afternoon, you could even say at times, but the winds here, you're going to be the last to see them, and the strongest winds are going to be south and east. So it's going to be eastern Pasco County that's going to see the strongest winds. Some of the weakest winds, because you'll be farther away from the center of Ian, will be up towards Crystal River, Inverness, Dunellen, as you head up 19. Over towards Polk, Hardy, DeSoto, and Highlands counties, winds here are picking up some gusts here over 40 miles an hour. into the 50s as you head down towards the Kinsey area, over towards Arcadia, Wauchula at 46. So these are now stronger tropical storm force winds. And of course, the core of the winds, these are going to be model estimated. But you got to figure with England in the eye wall, the winds probably at times gusting into the triple digits. And that's something that we've consistently seen now from Naples through Fort Myers, all the way up through Port Charlotte. Consistent reports in that eye wall of wind gusts between 100 and 120 miles per hour. Tampa, here's what the winds are going to look like as we go in the evening with the center of the storm passing to the south and east. I suspect that most folks around Metro Tampa will see frequent gusts of 55 to 65 miles an hour. Now, east of 75 in eastern and southern Hillsborough County, if you do get into portions of that western eye wall, you could see a wind gust in excess of 65, maybe even approaching hurricane strength. And a lot of that is going to happen during the over. So it's going to get loud at times. That's where probably most likely to lose power, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Polk County. It's not now as the storm is building. It's going to be several hours from now, especially after sunset, as that strongest core
What we're seeing there now is Hurricane Ian has made landfall in the southern tip of Florida as a Category 4 hurricane. It is pounding the southern tip of Florida, Fort Myers to be exact. Believe you me, it is a strong storm, and it's just going at 4 miles per hour. It is very, very strong hurricane. The feed that I'm getting is it's courtesy of oh my god, it is courtesy of hold a minute for me, please. I'm trying to get the name of the channel I'm getting it from. I think it's ABC Action News I'm getting it from. But believe you me, it is a strong hurricane. It is a strong hurricane that's pounding the southern tip of Florida. There's a live feed coming in. And then make we talk, Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe. This is what is coming out of Florida at the moment.
We're getting close, guys. It's coming. Eye's coming. We're going to get in the eye. Wow. Wow. Oh, here we go. Very strong winds. Oh my God. Woo! Car's rocking. Security alarms blaring. 971. Huge gusts! Huge gusts! Huge gusts! Alert! Extreme wind warning! Worst of it's coming now! A few more miles from the eye! If I tried to fly the drone right now, I'd end up in Texas. Oh, there we go.
by, they'll have some calm for a while as the eye goes over. But then Bill Cairns, our meteorologist, was saying the other side could actually bring even more wind than what you're seeing right now in Punta Gorda.
Yeah, let's go north of where Carrie is now to Steve Patterson. He's in St. Petersburg, Florida for us. We've seen conditions kind of go back, Steve, between not so bad and really bad. Talk to us about the last few minutes where you are.
I would say we are solidly now in bad. Wind gusts have been pretty solid, consistent along with the sustained winds that we've now been experiencing. But the gusts now, every few seconds, you're going to see me grab my hat and buckle down my knees in order to not blow over. It's just conditions really deteriorating here. Probably by the hour now. The rain bands have been kind of inconsistent, in and out, but the wind has really been miserable since we've been out here. Meanwhile, the tide, as you see Tampa Bay behind me, this is St. Pete's Pier. Tampa Bay has now been pushed out towards the Gulf of Mexico. Really an incredible sight. And what Carrie was describing, that motion as it churns towards the storm, then it will come back in a high tide much later, which of course will be much more dangerous. That is the primary concern from officials in this area. They're worried about the storm surge, of course, as everybody on the west coast of Florida is, but they're also worried about the possibility of catastrophic flooding, particularly in this area, very low-lying areas. So much of the city here in St. Petersburg, also Tampa, has been built up in these low-lying areas. So any amount of rain, and the amount of rain that we're expecting, when you talk about a storm that is now expected to crawl at somewhere around 3 or 4 miles per hour, the amount of rain that could dump could be incredible for an area like this. Absolutely catastrophic. Right now, though, the concern is on a few things. It's on utilities with this wind. It's on the wind damage itself. It's on the possibility of, as we've been seeing images of Naples, the power poles knocking over and causing fires, things that first responders are just no longer going to be able to get to because they're in zones in which just are not safe. And so the message has already gone out to people. If you haven't left from these mandatory evacuation zones yet, it's too late. You have to start thinking about hunkering down, where to do that and how to do that. Meanwhile, power outage is a concern as well. We're seeing about 60,000 in this area. This is an area that has experienced, obviously a high amount of power outages when we get a storm like this. But 60,000 so far just in this area, in the Tampa Bay area, in the area I'm in now, St. Petersburg. Sorry, I'm muffling my words because we get these wind gusts pretty solid every 5 to 10 minutes or so. Then, as you mentioned, it does die down, but then it'll surge back up. The problem is we're not anywhere near as intense as it's going to be. Probably around 8, 9 o'clock overnight when it's dark is when we will see the heaviest amount of presence from this storm. Of course, officials worried about that, but they are, again, most worried about that tail end coming in and just drowning this area in a deluge of rain, guys. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Steve Patterson for us in St. Petersburg. Steve, thank you.
Let's bring in NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. He's been tracking this all day long. Bill, walk us through what we're seeing right now. I couldn't take my eyes off the water behind Steve Patterson there. And just one, because we talked to the mayor of Naples earlier, and she was saying there's a lot of flooding in Naples. Is that coming to places like St. Petersburg and Tampa?
Not the St. Petersburg, Tampa area. They're getting the wind blowing out, so that's why they're okay. Just wait till you see some of the pictures from the Fort Myers area, Cape Coral. There's some stuff online and social media right now that's not cleared yet, and hopefully once we do that, we will show it to you. But I've seen video of a camera that was positioned in Fort Myers at 8 feet on a road, and that camera is now going underwater. And there are waves on top of that. There's a picture of the Fort Myers area. So the storm surge is in Fort Myers currently. I'm trying to look at this picture image. You can see some water surrounding that vehicle to the right there. Far to the left, you could see some water down some of the streets. I saw another video with a house that was floating with the roof ripped off of it.
In Fort Myers,
in Fort Myers, yeah. So our fears of that extreme storm surge, we've had the location to show you live what's going on there down to the south, but to the north, that's where it's probably really bad. So we were worry if the Hurricane Center was going to give us the official landfall designation. You could see the wobbling of the actual center line here. The center has now passed Captiva. It's past Sanibel. It's almost over the top of the northern end of Pine Island, heading right through Charlotte Harbor here. So that's where the center of the storm is. So if it goes right through Charlotte Harbor, we may not get official landfall designation till it arrives there in Punta Gorda. But that means that the backside, the lower end of the storm, and I'll ask my weather producer, Stephen, if he could shift this image a little bit to the north for me, and I can show you. So we're watching the high winds on the backside. There we go. We're going to show you the bottom of the, let me show you the southern portion of storm, Stephen, and that's the area where we're going to see the strongest surge coming in. Not this north port. This north portion of the storm is not where we're going to see the worst storm surge. It's going to be to the south of that, the southern portion of the eye. So if we continue lower down the radar here, Stephen, I want to show people what's happening down to the south of, here we go, keep going south. There we go. So it's right here. This is where we're seeing the worst of the storm surge. The Bonita Springs area is probably going to be a lot worse than people were expecting. And this area from Fort Myers southwards down here to Bonita Springs, this is where it is. And I'm just getting word now that we do officially have landfall 3:05 p.m. in what was that landfall location? Cayo Costa. So that was right here. We put it on the map here for a reason. So 3:05 p.m. officially a Category 4 landfall, strong as they get. That's just for the history books. The damage is already being done anyways. But the only designation that it really matters at this point is once we get that official landfall, and it's overland, it will slowly weaken. Not fast enough to prevent billions of more dollars of damage, but we do have that official landfall. So now we'll wait and see. The areas here. Here's Fort Myers. This area is underwater right now. As they go through the eye, that water will subside a little bit. It'll clear out. The winds will die down a little bit. And then they'll go through the backside of the storm where the winds will gust once again to 100, 120, 130 miles per hour. And when that happens, that's going to continue. Those areas south of Sanibel, from Fort Myers southwards, and Bonita Springs is unfortunately one of those areas, you're going to have that high storm surge probably for another 6-7 hours. The water's not going to recede because it's going to be being pushed from the southwest and then eventually the west, and the water's just going to sit on the coast. If you're wondering how about the storm surge problems around Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, because the storm is making landfall over you, you're not going to have that extreme 12 to 18-foot storm surge. That is going to be south of that landfall and down through the Fort Myers, the Cape Coral area. If you've ever seen Cape Coral at very low elevation, there's a chance that almost all of the city of Cape Coral is currently underwater with wave action on top of that. We're approaching high tide in all of these regions in here too. So let's go through just a wider view of the storm and some of the other issues. And we've been watching some of these wind reports, and a lot of people were worried about the Tampa area. We've had reports of winds up to about 60 miles per hour, so down trees, definitely some power outages. It's really once you get down to Sarasota that we start getting those hurricane gusts, and that's when you can start to see a little more in the way of widespread damage further to the south too. And just to give you an indication, one of my good friends is Mike Bettis that works for the Weather Channel, and he said this is the worst storm, guys, that he has seen in his 25 years of covering hurricanes, and he's been in 96 of them. Just to give you an idea of the pictures and the damage that is being done. Some of the storm chasers that have been doing this for decades are saying that this is one of the worst that they've ever experienced. And I hope it's not as bad as I'm making it sound, but I got a bad feeling it is.
And you've been tracking this sort of weather for a long time too, Bill. We know that when you have a bad feeling, it's well-founded. I am curious, as I look at the hurricane track behind you there, it makes landfall, as you said, but then it's still a hurricane for hours and hours and hours and hours. And so we're going to see interior parts of Florida affected by hurricane problems as well, right? What do you expect? Yeah, so this is Osceola County, this is Polk County in this area here. And then once you get up in this region, you start getting towards, Kissimmee and the Disney complex. And then you get into the high population areas, especially once you get into the downtown Orlando. So, I was actually, when Charlie made landfall, I was working at the time in the Orlando area. I was actually standing out in a parking lot when Hurricane Charlie came right over the top, and it had winds still 90 miles per hour. People in Orlando didn't have power for 1 to 2 weeks, and that was far inland. And I'll never forget, all the blue tarps afterwards, and that's going to be the scene that's going to play out. So we're going to wait and see.
now that we got landfall, and eventually slowly that process of winding down will happen, just how strong it will be when it makes it up to the I-4 corridor. Right now, the Hurricane Center is saying that by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, about 70-mile-per-hour winds. That's still enough to do a lot of tree damage. Charlie was a little stronger than that. I believe it was more like 90, 95 in the Orlando area. We take it northwards off Daytona. We're going to have some storm surge issues tomorrow during the day, because remember, here's the storm spinning this way, and that's going to blow the wind onshore into areas around Jacksonville, St. Augustine, heading up towards Amelia Island and New Brunswick to Savannah, the beautiful coastal areas here. It's not going to be like what's happening now in Fort Myers, fortunately for them, but it's still going to be a 4 to 6 foot storm surge. There still could be some issues, and that water is going to back up on the St. Johns River too, so there'll be some flooding problems with it. Again, there's the 12 to 18 foot. We don't know exactly how high the water is in Fort Myers. The gauge stopped working, but it's going to be the worst they've ever seen in the history of the city, and probably the worst they've ever seen throughout this entire region, guys.
Bill, can I ask one more question? And forgive my meteorological ignorance here, but once the storm surge comes in, you said it could last, you said 6-7 hours, maybe in some places?
It all depends on where you're located. So, with the angle of approach and the way the peninsula is here for Florida, so the storm's going to go like this. Remember, the winds around the storm are going to go counterclockwise. So if you're down here to the south, right now they have a wind that's coming out of the south-southwest in areas from, Naples all the way up here to Bonita Springs. You can see that fetch coming in. So the way the radar is moving is the way that the winds are moving, and that's piling the water up right along this portion right here. That's where the highest storm surge is. And as this storm continues to move inland, it's just going to drag all of this through. It's not going to change until the storm finally is almost up to Orlando. So, they're going to have a peak of storm surge, and it's not like it's going to rush out. It's just going to sit there for a long time. And now that just does even more damage. I mean, I think, some people are asking me, they're starting to see, and, first off, I make a forecast, and sometimes people are like, the forecaster is always going to make it sound worse than it is. I think people are starting to realize, no, when we said catastrophic, we weren't lying. This is catastrophic. And now it's like trying to picture what it's going to look like tomorrow and the days ahead. And my fear is not just for the lives of the people that stayed behind, but even for the people that have to go back. What are they going back to? Because even if you had 10 feet of water in your house, and if you know how humid it is in Florida, you can't live in that house afterwards, even if you do get power back on, because you're going to have mold everywhere and everything else. So we're going to have thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 of people that are going to need a place to live. And that's going to be the story in the weeks ahead.
All right, meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, thank you.
Sam Brock is with us. He's in Sarasota, Florida, which is north of the places that we've most recently checked in with, and you're getting an alert there.
I figured that might be apropos. Kate and Aaron, good to talk with you. Let me read it to you. Take cover now, all caps. Shelter in place, extreme weather warning. So you heard that very sobering assessment from Bill Cairns just a second ago when you saw the counterclockwise rotation on the funnel. And what you're looking at right now is a situation in Sarasota. We're right on the edge of that sort of northwest quadrant of the eye wall, just above it. And the winds here, guys, I can tell you right now, the wind gusts have approached triple digits. It's interesting to kind of lay this geographically in the context of Steve, who was out there in Pinellas County, and then Carrie just before that, who was in Punta Gorda. We're right in the middle in Sarasota. I've been refreshing the power outage numbers just to try to get a sense, really, of where we stand relative to everybody else. Florida right now is a state. 800,000 customers, no power at the moment. Now, 37% of the customers in Charlotte County, which is where Carrie is, have no power. We're actually at almost 40%. And yet, Kerry, when you watched him during his live shot, first was clinging to that sign. The sign then ended up on the ground. We saw images of the power poles bending in the wind during Kerry's shot, but the figures are worse than they are in Charlotte County. It's going to be a problem we'll be talking for the days ahead. Certainly, right now, fear for life and the fact that not enough people got into shelters when they were told specifically to get out of evacuation zones, but also access to electricity. If you look up the definition, a Category 4 storm, and what that means for communities, it will say uprooting of trees, snapping of power lines, isolation of areas, and no access to power for weeks or months at a time. That's the scenario we're looking at potentially right now. We did get a briefing, guys, from Governor DeSantis about an hour ago, let's say, and he said that at the moment, they have 40,000 people on standby getting ready to jump in and try to fix some of those electrical issues when they can. before we can even get to that stage, of course, right now, rescues could be in order. But that 45-mile-per-hour wind threshold is when emergency responders cannot legally go out and try to help people because it's too dangerous. That's where we are in Sarasota. That's where most folks are right now in this general region, Southwest Florida, as the concerns continue to ratchet up. And this is just, I mean, you're looking behind me right now. It's relatively calm versus what we just saw 5 minutes ago. Steve was saying every 5 or 10 minutes, you'll see a wind gust. We did get one of those that actually pushed me up the stairs that I was walking on. I had to go backwards. So that was sort of the rarity right now. I feel like instead of that being the exception, though, it might be much more common in these coming hours. So no doubt there's a state of emergency. You have a couple hundred almost shelters throughout Florida. But people can't get into them at this point. The guidance from Governor DeSantis, if you were left at home, is to submit online documentation as to where you are so they can look if they're not able to touch base with everybody after this all clears. Ken and Aaron, let me send it back to you.
Sam Brock in Sarasota for us. Sam, thank you.
Let's turn to Ali Velshi, south of where Sam is. He's in Naples, Florida for us today, where the streets are already filling up with water. Ali, about 15, 20 minutes ago, this hurricane made landfall about 50 miles from where you are. It's been rough there in Naples. Set the scene for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, these distinctions about landfall or not are little distinctions. The distinction between Category 5 and 155-mile-per-hour Category 4 are little distinctions. But for whatever reason, when that landfall occurred, something kicked up over here that we hadn't been seeing for hours. Now, this is what we've been seeing for hours. This is a roadway. This parking hotel that we're staying in. Typically, when we cover a hurricane, we don't cover the land side of things. This is looking east. This is the land side of things, believe it or not. And we have watched water levels rise and rise and rise here. This is the best description I've ever seen of storm surge. This is the Gulf of Mexico that you're looking at in the parking lot of our hotel. Cars that were all lined up on the left and right have now just piled up next to each other. You're seeing debris all over the place. But what kicked up here was the wind. If you look over here, Randy's going to give you a look. It's very windy. We are just about at high tide right now. So that's part of the problem. But you're just seeing more power and more wind coming in than we've seen all morning. So this has largely been a water event for most of the day here in Naples. It's now a complete flooding event. We've got flooding all along Naples and no clear delineation between the Gulf of Mexico and Naples proper. The beach is not to be seen. It'll come back by tomorrow, but for now there's no beach or sand to be seen. But what you're now seeing is a high wind event here, and you can see the trees, the way they're moving in the right. This is definitely new in the last 20 minutes or so. So, again, no rescue crews out here, no one here to fix the power outages that are affecting us. And if you're on the first floor anywhere around this area in Naples, you're in trouble. They have told people to shelter in place. Obviously, do not attempt to drive at this point. And we know that there are about more than 200,000 people in the immediate counties without power right now. It's pretty universal. If you're in southwestern Florida, you don't have power at this point. So that's where we stand. Hours and hours more of this to go before you start to see rescues or EMS coming out to start to help people.
And Ali, we were talking to the mayor of Naples a little while ago, and she said the barrier islands, we only have a couple minutes here, but she said the barrier islands, which are, if you can point us to where those are, that's a big problem right now. She said they're hearing of massive flooding out there.
Yes. Very, very important point. This is the Gulf of Mexico over there, so you're looking southwest right now. If you were to turn, and we can't do that, but it's basically to your right. That's the northern coast of western Gulf Florida, and that's where the barrier islands are. And there are lots of them, and that's really dangerous. And by the way, that's exactly where we're going to see the 12-foot plus flooding. And we are at Barrier Island. You got the Gulf of Mexico basically on both sides of you, and that's what the problem is. Generally speaking, in these parts, it's land on that side. So the water has come in and it will come out. If you're on a barrier island, you're flooded, and you're going to be flooded for a long time, Kate.
All right, Ali Velshi, stay safe, please. You're making me a little bit nervous. I know you guys are staying safe as you can. You're on the second floor, right?
We're on the second floor at the moment, and we got more room to go up if we need to.
Okay.
All right, Ali Velshi for us. We should note, as we've been saying, this storm, this hurricane has officially made landfall. That was at 3:05 Eastern time this afternoon in Cayo Costa, Florida. Hurricane Ian, now one of the strongest storms that coast has had to deal with in many years.
Coming ashore as a Category 4 hurricane, and it's unclear when that will change. Right now, we've got a Category 4 hurricane lingering over this part of the coast of Florida.
There are evacuation orders that were put in place days ago in some communities along the coast there. The barrier islands we've been talking about frequently, obviously, have been evacuated. There are some people, as our reporters have noted, who've chosen to stay, and now they're being encouraged to hunker down to avoid finding themselves in situations where they can't be rescued, as we know that first responders now have to take cover themselves.
Right. When the wind is over 45 miles per hour, we've been told, Florida officials have said, they can't go out. They have to wait till it subsides. And we're looking, as our reporters have been noting, we're looking at hours ahead of us. And this is going to last at least into a good part of the evening before the winds die down.
Yeah, when you have a storm this strong coming ashore, it takes a while for it to burn itself out, if you will. And that's something that this is a storm we're going to be watching for hours and hours to come, and then the effects of this storm
for
days or weeks ahead before we start to see things get anything close to normal across all of Florida as a result of Hurricane Ian.
We're going to end our special report right now. We will come back on the air when news warrants that. For those watching on NBC News Now or some of our NBC stations in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, we will be back in a moment with more coverage on NBC News Daily.
I can't hear you. Say it again.
You don't know when your moment's coming, but when it does, you take it.
We're here to start conversations about the big things happening in our world, because it's not my job to tell you what to think. My job is to think about what you tell me.
Now Tonight with Joshua Johnson, streaming weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
I think when you open your eyes, you get to decide, how's my day going to be? We want to be a way to start your day, lighten your load, every single morning.
For Dateline Premium, subscribe now on Apple Podcasts.
Now Tonight with Joshua Johnson, streaming weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
News is happening now.
Look at what's making headlines around the world.
We're coming on the air with breaking news.
This is a significant moment.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Stay on top of breaking news and the big stories of the day with NBC News Daily.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Morgan Radford.
And I'm Vicki Wynn.
I'm Aaron Gilchrist.
And I'm Kate Snow.
Get in-depth reporting from across the country.
What's your reaction to the president's comments?
And around the world.
Are Ukrainians continuing to make advances?
And ways you can take care of your health.
Who should be getting tested, and frankly, how often?
And your wallet.
Costs are skyrocketing. How to manage soaring prices.
NBC News Daily. Weekdays from 12 to 4 p.m. Eastern on NBC News Now.
Hey, podcast fans, ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get early access to originals, plus bonus content, and everything is ad-free. So head to Apple Podcasts now to subscribe.
The day's biggest political stories with trusted insight now and expert analysis now. A daily look at the politics behind the headlines. Meet the Press Now, streaming weekdays at 4 p.m. on NBC News Now.
Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
These days, it feels like the news never stops. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. It can be hard to keep up, so let's get started together.
Allie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kate Snow.
And I'm Aaron Gilchrist. This is our special coverage of Hurricane Ian, which has officially made landfall now in southwest Florida.
The impact of this Category 4 storm being felt all across the state, particularly on the western shore of Florida. Right now, more than 500,000 customers are without power, potentially as many as 800,000 from our last reports, and that number expected to rise dramatically.
Now, at this point, experts are also predicting the storm surge is going to be historic. It will be life-threatening for people along the coast there. The National Hurricane Center says water levels could rise as much as 18 feet. And if that wasn't enough, a tornado watch is also in effect right now for a lot of areas. Kevin Ruane is the manager of Lee County, where they've already seen dozens of calls for search and rescue help. Mr. Manager, talk to us about what you're hearing, what you're having to deal with there as this storm comes ashore.
Good afternoon. I'm a commissioner for Lee County. So what we're doing is gathering names from the people that have requested rescue and search. We have military helicopters on standby, but obviously need to wait for the winds to die down before we're able to start getting those people.
Do you have a projection for that then? I mean, if you know that people are out there and they're needing help, and I know that you've warned folks that help will be slow to come once the storm became a bigger issue, do you have any idea when you'll be able to get to those folks, and what kind of situations they found themselves in at this point?
Most people have called or in attics of their homes where water has actually gone through their home through the first and second floor. Wow. So they're hibernating in attics. So that's what we have calls from. Different loved ones have actually made phone calls. Obviously, what we need to do with military is, for a helicopter to fly, it's got to have the proper wind. And obviously, with heavy, we're not going to be able to do anything. This is something we have certainly made sure people are aware of very, very, very early in this process. And unfortunately, equipment just can't.
We said you're Lee County, for those who don't know Florida. That's the Fort Myers area, and I think you're sitting in Fort Myers, Mr. Commissioner, right now. When you said they're in their attics, it makes me want to panic. Do you predict that the water will then go back down and these people will be okay, or could the water rise even higher and they're in big trouble?
So obviously, Sanibel and the Barrier Islands, we're seeing obviously the storm surge that you've been talking about. They're 10, 12 feet. So we believe that obviously as the eyes pass, they'll start to see some of the water, exceed. So obviously they'll start to see some relief. But, there's nothing we can do at this moment. We couldn't even get a helicopter in the air with the size of the wind force. I mean, it would come right down. I mean, I can't put first responders and military's way. So we're really in a box we don't want to be. And we're communicating with the loved ones that have actually said we don't have anyone in any action. We understand the anxiety they're going through.
Are you worried about loss of life?
Oh, of course we are. Not only am I a commissioner and have been, I was the mayor of Sanibel for 11 years. So I know that island all too well. Understand exactly. It floods in normal rainstorms. I mean, I can't imagine what the storm surge is doing. And knowing first people called on the list, I understand where they live. I understand that, the capacity and where they are. I mean, when you go for as long as I did, you get to know people basis.
We know you have engineers and who advise you a situation. Is this bad as you expect it to get? How much worse do you expect it to get before this is all said and done, before you're able to get out and try to help people?
So we believe the best we've seen, or the worst, I should say. But the problem goes into Punta Gorda as the Charlotte Harbor is to obviously start to have water. It's going to push it south to get some water. Obviously, it goes through. It's really going to come down to the tides, and the levels to see what we're going to see. Hopefully, at least if there's a couple hours, we'll have some. So we have to have some more capacity. But this is exactly what everyone forecasted when you said 12 to 14 islands right now.
And is there Fort Myers proper as well? I mean, earlier it sounds like there's flooding downtown too.
On the shoreline, anything that's close to water is going to obviously have some type of concern. That's really going to be the situation that you have. So anyone that's near water, anything in the south part of Florida, so 6 different cities. So you have Benita as a beach, you have Fort Myers Beach, you have Sanibel, with waterways vulnerable to this. So we have a huge capacity. There's over 850,000 people that live in Lee County. So probably a third of them are on water.
Kevin Ruane, the lead there, joining our thoughts with you and your as you get through this storm best.
Thank you very much.
Let's do Jay Boudishwar. He's the Naples city manager. As I understand it, warn residents about what to expect when it recedes. Thanks for being with most concerned about?
Great. Kate, I'm concerned, quite frankly, about a lot of things. We are finally reaching high tide situation here in Naples. We've seen water. Some of the footage that you've been shown gives what's happening in Naples. We want to stress to people in the Naples area to adhere to the curfew that we had a little bit earlier today. We need people to stay off the streets. It is extremely dangerous, and